Welcome to the second lesson on working with alcohol inks. This lesson is all about creating marble effects. If you haven't watched the first lesson yet, which is a basic introduction to alcohol inks, how they work, and different application techniques, I highly recommend watching that first. This lesson is more of a next level class and will be most helpful to those who already have some experience with alcohol inks. I'm about to select the colors for this piece, and I recommend getting yourself a color wheel. It really helps with choosing the best combinations. I'll be working with purple and pink tones. In the color wheel, they sit close to each other, and I'll be aiming to recreate the look of an amethyst stone. I'm using A18 bright purple, then Marsala A16, bronze M22, and Cocoa, a pastel shade from our soft color collection. Now I'll prepare each color in a separate cup, mixing it with alcohol at a ratio of about 1:4. You can also use blending solution if you prefer, it's up to you. I'll start with the darkest and brightest shades, working with a root drying technique using a hair dryer. I dry the ink from the bottom and guide the flow in the direction I want. The dryer stays about 1–2 centimeters above the paper and always parallel to the surface. I want to create a smooth gradient using these colors. They're quite similar, so when blended together, they shouldn't produce any muddy tones. That's why I go ahead and add bright purple next and dry it. This will give me a beautiful, clean gradient. If the ink doesn't move, you can slightly tilt the paper to help guide the flow, or even add a drop of alcohol where you want the ink to go. Just make sure your surface is level. I'm not focusing too much on the shape right now, I'm just filling the space with the main color. First I added Marsala, then bright purple, which blended into a nice gradient. This shape doesn't look anything like marble yet, and that's okay. The goal is to fill the canvas first, and then we'll move on to forming the actual marble effect. Right now, I want to finish drying this shape and bring it all the way to the edge of the paper. This step is essential before we can move on. You always need to fully dry the area before adding any new elements. If you want to change the form significantly or extend it, then you can add more color, but only in the direction you're pulling your shape, just like I did earlier. However, for what I'm about to do next, which you'll see very soon, it's absolutely crucial to dry everything thoroughly, completely dry. Right now, I don't care how well it dries or how perfect the result looks. What matters to me most is filling the composition, the format, the color. At the end, I'll wipe away the excess ink with a tissue instead of drying it fully, because this whole shape is just a base, a foundation. Later, we'll build the final design right on top of it. Next, I'm using cocoa and bronze, which I already prepared in separate cups. I keep them close by and start softening the edges of the shape with my finger. This makes it easier to dissolve later. You can also pour alcohol directly onto the area instead of rubbing it. I just personally like to soften it a little first. After pouring some alcohol, I add a bit of bronze. At this point, we don't need more bold colors, we already have them. Now it's all about building transitions and fluid shapes. As the alcohol spreads, it dissolves the edges and the bronze pigment adds delicate accents just like mineral veins in stone. At the very beginning, you can add less alcohol so that the liquid stays more controlled. But once you fix the shape a little, I recommend adding more, so there's enough room for the ink to move. The liquid flows into itself by inertia, so adding a bit more fluid where you want the ink to go is a good way to guide the movement. We also do this with the help of the hair dryer. If the ink starts running too far, you can push it back gently with the dryer. Techniques like these come naturally after practice. By the way, in the first lesson, we covered some great beginner techniques that will help you build muscle memory and gain control over the ink flow. To gain confidence working with alcohol inks, the only thing you need is practice. Just practice and the whole process will stop feeling complicated. It's all about learning how to control the air from the hair dryer. We're used to working with brushes or hands, but here we're painting with air. That's why practicing air control is the most important part of mastering this technique. I'm now drying the area just like I did before, but I can already see that this section turned out way too heavy, the color is too dark and saturated, nothing like the soft transitions I had imagined. So now I'll show you how to fix it. First, I blot the dried ink with a dry tissue, make sure it's fully dry. Then I pour alcohol and a bit of bronze on top to repeat the same steps and create a softer, lighter transition. Because the point of this effect, the marble effect, is to build soft, airy transitions. There's no place here for heavy stains, remember that. When working with gold, you can use the hair dryer more aggressively. Only with this intense drying technique can you break the pigment and create sharp crystal-like edges. Again, it takes practice. Try it on a few test pieces and feel how the gold behaves. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to create the same beautiful effects I'm building right now in this video. Each section must be completely dried before you move on. This is really important, otherwise things might smear or the ink might flow somewhere you didn't want it to. So make sure to dry every part fully. Don't skip this step. Now I'm dissolving another part of the artwork and adding bronze. I start drying mostly along the sides. I don't close the semicircle here because I actually want the excess ink to flow off the edge of the paper. I'm adding a bit more bronze and continue drying along the edges. But I notice the pigment concentration is a bit too high. That's not the effect I'm going for. I want more of a soft transition, so I blot some ink away with a tissue. Now I add the pastel shade Cocoa. It's time to bring in a bit of softness. Then I add some more bronze and continue drying again along the edges. Now I'm much happier with the result, so don't hesitate to blot excess ink with a tissue and let the extra flow off the paper. That's how you avoid harsh spots or stains. If the ink stops moving, it will leave a spot. Keep it flowing. I often tilt the paper to guide the ink where I want it, because trying to push it with a hairdryer sometimes creates less delicate results. So don't be afraid to use tilting techniques to direct or pull the ink back. Now I'm drying the ink along the edges again. It's looking quite nice already. The most important thing is to keep watching the result as it develops and make little adjustments. Sometimes I pull the ink back with my finger, that's why I always wear gloves. I literally guide the color where I need it with my fingertips and dry it with the hairdryer. In art, all techniques are valid, remember that. Now I'm trying to finish this section. To close the fragment smoothly, I need the ink to flow gently off the edge of the paper with a soft and elegant transition. I just had a bit of an unfortunate moment. There was a puddle of alcohol on the table and it dissolved part of my artwork on the side. In this case, it's not critical, but it can be really frustrating, especially when you've worked hard on something and one careless drop ruins it. So always dry everything thoroughly and make sure the table is clean and dry, especially when moving the paper around. This is really important. Now I have another section here that also needs to turn into a soft transition. I think I'll have to wipe it off completely. I use alcohol to clean the area, then pour in more alcohol, add the pastel shade cocoa and mix in some bronze. Then I start drying. I also dissolve another part that wasn't fully wiped earlier. I left it on purpose to blend into a soft gradient. You don't have to remove everything. It's better to leave a little bit of the color to help with that transition. Then I go back to the same method, drying from the sides, adding bronze as needed, and adding alcohol to let the ink flow from both ends. I dry mostly along the edges and use a slightly stronger airstream to move the gold and create delicate golden streaks. I finished drying this section and the result is beautiful. I really like this transition, but now I notice another part that doesn't look quite right. It feels off and not in a good way. So in this lesson, I want to encourage you to be brave. Don't be afraid to wipe away what you don't like. I just poured alcohol on that area and I'm waiting for the ink to dissolve. Now I blot it off with a tissue. That bold spot is gone. Instead, I add cocoa again, then a bit of bronze, and work gently create a soft marble effect, because that's exactly what we're doing here today. So I'm taking the time to refine this part and bring everything together. I hope you're enjoying this lesson and that you'll appreciate the final result we're working toward. At this point, I don't need to keep describing every step. I'm doing the same things I already demonstrated earlier. Just observe and watch. Maybe the way I work boldly and intuitively will inspire you to be more confident with alcohol inks, to experiment, and to not be afraid of creating stunning effects. Now I want to point out something. Sometimes I let the ink reach the very edge of the paper, right to where it would normally flow off, but then I change my mind. I decide to bring it back in the opposite direction, reworking the shape and creating a second layer. I add just a little alcohol to soften what's already dry, and I build a soft transition between the layers. That's exactly what I just did, and it turned out beautifully. In this lesson, I also want to touch on how to protect your alcohol ink artwork. I recommend using an acrylic spray varnish. It's a simple and effective way to seal the painting and make it more durable. Just avoid varnishes made for oil paintings or solvent-based ones, especially anything alcohol-based, because those can reactivate or damage the ink. Instead, choose water-based varnishes, especially those labeled for watercolor or pastel. They work best with alcohol inks. And now I'll show you a popular way to add gold accents to your artwork. Many of you probably feel like your painting needs more gold detailing, or you just want to enhance some lines. For this, I recommend using liquid gilding, a beautiful metallic paint that you can match to your ink tones. I'm using the shade Warm Brass, which perfectly complements my bronze alcohol ink. They look almost identical. Using a thin brush, I add subtle highlights, just repeating some natural lines that already exist in the painting. This helps bring harmony and clarity to the piece. The key here is restraint. A little gold can elevate the whole artwork, but too much can ruin the effect. Of course, if you love gold, go ahead and use liquid gilding more boldly and create the look that speaks to you. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Bye bye. See you next video.